Hey, good evening, everyone. Well, good afternoon. Hey, whatever time you're listening. Good morning, everybody. You're listening to another edition of the Riff On podcast. This is number 7. This is Eric D., your co-host. And instead of being joined by one of my former friends and co-hosts, they're just unable to get together, we brought in a special guest here. I brought Pauly V in from the other side of Colchester.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I have to say, first of all, it is super refreshing to go to somebody else's place and do a podcast rather than have them at my house.
Welcome to the Riff On podcast studio. It's the other side of Colchester.
It's very cozy, and I'd love to be in somewhere else other than looking at my own same 4 walls.
Right.
You know what I mean?
My 4 walls, it's different decor. Everyone needs decor to make themselves feel comfortable. This is actually my day job office where I spend 40 hours a week, and you might as well be comfortable, right? So hopefully you're enjoying some of the surroundings of paraphernalia and memorabilia and what have you. So
I have been. In fact, while I was waiting for you down here and I was setting my stuff up, I realized that you had a photo on your wall, and it's not just a photo. I mean, you have multiple photos and stuff, and I was looking at this one, but it's a portrait, and it's a sketched portrait. Looks like it's done in pencil by a very talented person, and I had to get very close and look and see who the artist was. Not just to know who it was, but because I knew of his work. I used to go to the mall when I was a kid, and I would always see like a kiosk with his work for sale. I'm going to guess that's where you got this.
Maybe the fair.
This image I'm referring to.
I'm trying to remember where.
The artist's name is Bradford J. Salomon. Salomon? It's Salamon.
So Bradford
Salomon.
is his first name.
Bradford is his first name, and he's a famous sketch artist that does famous musicians. Mostly that's all I've ever seen of his work is famous musicians. And I was looking at this particular photo and this musician, and it reminded me of a musician from a band that I like. And it's funny because this is not the same. It's not who I'm going to say it is. I thought it was the lead singer of the band Sepultura, which is a Brazilian metal band.
No.
Max Cavalera would have been his name, and it's not. And I was like, that can't be right. There's no way that this guy would have drawn an image of Max Cavalera because it's just Sepultura. It's not a big, huge band. I mean, they are huge, but in the metal industry, they're not the biggest. I know he's done some of James Hetfield and some of the Metallica. I think he does a four shot of the Metallica guys, like all of their faces. It's all 4 of them, like kind of just, it would be something you'd see on a t-shirt. So I was looking at this and I was like, there's no way it's him. And I'm like, well, who is it? And just as you walked in, and when I was pointing at it, and I said, I'm going to save it for the podcast, I looked at it and I was like, it's Eddie Vedder. That's who it is. And you know what? You know what sealed the deal? When I looked up to the right there and I saw your Vitalogy, is it Vitalogy?
Vitalogy album.
Yeah, I saw the album up there and I was like, it's definitely Eddie Vedder. So this guy is a Pearl Jam fan,
and
folks.
Tucked behind that is a Versus album, and tucked behind that is a 10 album, and they're all sealed.
Awesome.
So I got into Pearl Jam in 1991. Pearl Jam is very near and dear to my heart, and especially last year when they were just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because I'm big into music and big into sports and big into Hall of Fames. And in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you can't be inducted until 25 years after your first commercial release. I'll always remember 10 coming out, and I'll always remember I got to see them very early on in Lollapalooza 92, and just falling in love with the band and Temple of the Dog and the Seattle scene, and being very, very big into that band from day one. So when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame last year, it was the first band that I've watched the full career spectrum go from release to induction, and it was just incredible for me to watch it. I've been a big fan of theirs for years. I've seen them probably only about 3 times or so, but my parents sold my childhood home a couple of Octobers ago, and they still had all of my posters. So I actually have them over here in the corner all rolled up. I have a big, huge, probably at least 6 Pearl Jam posters in there. One of them's a 6-foot long, stage shot of them. I have one with the original 10 guy. I don't even know what his expression is, the stick man, essentially.
Yeah.
But I used to have that shirt, and I actually wish I had more of the original shirts I had, but I do have my Lollapalooza 92 shirt, and I do have my Choices Pearl Jam shirt, which on the back is 8 out of 10 kids prefer crayons to guns, and I still like to wear that one a lot. But a huge Pearl Jam fan, absolutely. And I would put them up there if I could meet any band or hang out with any band for a day. Pearl Jam is probably it. I brought Brian Eckert to see Let's Play 2 at Merrill's, whatever it is, the theater on Shelburne Road when they did the release 4 months ago or whatever it was, if not a little bit. No, it was last October because it was right around playoff time. But I brought Brian Eckert, our mutual friend from Four Quarters Brewing, to the show, and it was just a moving experience. I tell everyone, if you're a baseball fan or if you're a Pearl Jam fan, you need to see it. And if you're a baseball and Pearl Jam fan, it's like a must watch because it's just extremely well done. But I've always wanted to hang out with Eddie and just kind of be around the band for even an hour. But love those guys.
I felt that way about a couple bands that I've idolized over the years, and I almost wonder that if meeting them would actually be a bad idea because my expectations would not be met or something, and I would be very disappointed in who they were as people.
Right.
I mean, I think that every band has this persona that they portray on stage and like, what you see in the media and stuff like that. And it might not necessarily be how they are as people. I mean, you know how media can kind of turn everything into a positive thing or anything into a negative thing if they want to. So I don't know. It's like, and I know that one of my favorite artists is known to be an asshole in real life. So I definitely don't want to meet him just because I already know what the outcome would be. But, going into it, maybe knowing that he's an asshole, maybe if I did meet him, maybe he wouldn't be, and it would change, what I was expecting.
Is he a member of the T-shirt that
yes,
you're
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I
was thinking
I talk enough about this band on my podcast. I'm not even going to go into it here.
I thought maybe that's going to be who it was. So I've got a mishmash of decorations from different monumental things in my career. Grace Potter show from 11 years ago now. That was literally. I could do a whole podcast on that show because of the experience that it was getting there and the show in general. Fish Coventry 2004. I have that poster from Pollock, which is a very well-known show in Fish history, even though the show itself was a nightmare by every Fish fan's accounts, but you needed to go.
I've heard about that show.
It was not fun. I was at Higher Ground on day 1 and on year 10. Unfortunately, I missed year 20, but there's my 10-year Higher Ground poster with day 1 and year 10's tickets tucked in there. Trey played Higher Ground on his first solo tour with a Trey band, and he actually debuted the band at Higher Ground, and that Higher Ground show is actually not on that poster, which I thought was kind of cool, and things like that. And I get to see, I didn't see Jeter's send-off. I'm a big Yankee fan for anybody that knows me, but last year with Jeter's number being retired and whatnot, I went to the stadium and grabbed a foam finger for Jeter, and I did get a chance to see the Yankees in the final season, picked up a t-shirt there. Vassar Clements, a great fiddleist from Olden in the Way before he retired. Got to see him at the old Higher Ground. I got a couple of autographs there and different things like that. And I slowly get to add some stuff up. But recently I picked up these album frames years ago. And spontaneously, within the last couple of months, I was like, I actually have a couple of albums to put in there. It's my father's Led Zeppelin 2 and Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album from his youth. My dad graduated high school in 71. So
those are those are the original cardboard,
yeah. They're in there. The album is in there. They're in there and everything. They were my dad's. His name is actually written on Led Zeppelin 2. You can actually see Donald Lucier in there. And so that's some of my decorations, so to speak. And I still look at myself thinking I have too much of a blank wall, but I have other stuff I could hang. And sometimes I just wish I started being really involved in the minimalist philosophy last year, and I didn't really take anything to heart. Well, I kind of did, and there's evidence of a pile over here of some cleaning that I did do. I'm trying to, and haven't done a good job. And then over there's about 2,000 CDs. I probably still have maybe 3,000 or so, in tucked in between the live releases and my commercial releases and things that I just can't get rid of. Things that are just near and dear to my heart. And every time I try to narrow down some of these CDs and get rid of some of them, each one of them to me is a story and a memory.
Absolutely.
And I just can't do it.
And that's what makes it hard for people to get rid of things. And it's funny that you mentioned the minimalist movement. I wouldn't consider myself a minimalist by any means, but over the years, and I am known to hoard certain things. Like I like to hoard electronics. So cables and things that I think that I might need. I mean, I'm pretty good about going through and eventually getting rid of things. I mean, I look at some USB 2.0 stuff, like cables I'll see, and I'll be like, no, I shouldn't save this. And I've gotten a lot better. I'm not minimalist by any means, but I'm definitely controlling how much stuff that I do save, because I save stuff and I hold on to things, and I think it's definitely good to get rid of things, but it's definitely hard to get rid of things when you're holding on to them from memories. When you look at something and you're like, oh, I remember this, and that's usually what they say is like the hardest part about letting something go is when you stop to reminisce about everything. You associate it with a memory or a point in your life, and it makes it more difficult to let something go. I still have a hard time letting things go. I do it, and it is difficult, but I have to make it happen, or else I would just have too much stuff. And my wife, she likes to hoard things. I can't have two people doing it, so I've got to let more things go for myself. Her stuff I sneak out the door when she's not listening, not looking. Kate, if you hear this, sorry, honey, but it happens, and you know what happens. So when she's not around and she's gone for a couple of days, things that have been around for a couple of years just find their way out the door. Now, anything sentimental to her, I wouldn't do that. But like things that I know are legit not useful and we will never use them, gone. So, but yeah, it can get difficult. But you know what? Those might be worth something someday, man.
Oh my gosh, yeah, maybe 15 cents a piece. I preach now about Spotify. I was apprehensive to, I don't know why, to subscribe to actual Spotify paid service until this past summer. They basically, I've been a Spotify free user for probably about 5 years, if not longer, for a very, very long time. And they they offered, I should say, the premium service for like 99 cents for 3 months or $10 for 3 months, something where it was just very low, involvement. And I was like, all right, I'm in, let me give it a whirl. And once I went through my trial 3 months, I was like, I cannot fathom not having paid Spotify again. So now
their marketing worked for you.
It's $10 a month. On you. If XM, and we can talk about this afterwards, worked the same way. And I actually got an email from them where we can talk about that. But I can basically download, I forget what it is, 3,000 songs, onto my phone and stream. Now that I have unlimited data, I can just stream right through my van and everything that is. And so when it was like, all right, $10 a month, it's like I used to go to Pure Pump Records and spend probably 30 to 50 a week. Easy on CDs. Absolutely. I mean, all the time. And there's no time I'd ever walk in and not walk out with under $10 spent. So for 1 month, it's $10. And I no longer hear commercials when I listen, obviously, but it's the instantly, anytime, grab it, stream it, play it.
And you can on-demand any song you want to hear at any given point in time.
As long as they're on Spotify.
Exactly. Which is what, like 98%?
Trying to think of the one thing I looked at recently that wasn't on there, but it doesn't ring a bell. So it's like this morning I jumped on, I wasn't around for Friday, so I jumped on the new releases, and I went through the new releases and things like that. And then I jumped into Discover Weekly, which comes out every Monday, which is just a conglomeration. It's their algorithm of saying you'll probably like this, and they play through that. And it's worth every penny. I mean, I listen to it for one day, and it's worth my $10. So all of those CDs nowadays are basically completely obsolete and are $10 a month for me on Spotify, but I still cannot part with them. And I just look at them. And actually, the remnants, I just covered up that box over there. We had a garage sale last year, and I went through and I pulled out about 12 CDs I can imagine parting with, and not one of them is sold because they're like the bottom of the barrel stuff that I wanted to part with that still probably meant a little bit something to me, but none of them sold anything. There's no value to, unless it's a heartstring. Where is that sentimental thing for anybody else?
I can tell you where it can come in handy to hold on to CDs, and I'm not going to say that this is, I don't know, it doesn't apply to every CD and every artist, but I did get in a situation where I let go of all of my CDs at one point. I was like, I saw that the digital age was coming and the streaming, and I just found myself not putting CDs into anything. They were just in a closet, and I think I moved them like twice, and I might have fished through the box that they were in a couple of times to grab one here and there. But for the most part, the internet was serving all my needs for listening, and I decided I just didn't need them anymore, and I let them go. Now, they're not in the dump. I did give them to my ex, and she stored them somewhere. So they're somewhere right now, and I'm glad that they are, because someday I'm going to need these back when she finds them. And the reason is because the band of the T-shirt I'm wearing, the leader of the band decided to go and remaster every single album in order to remove tracks to eliminate people from making money on this. So that he put the music back out, the remasters, eliminated the original recordings, and because somebody else played music on the new tracks that he remastered, he doesn't have to pay them money. It was like a money-making thing. So anyway,
yeah.
the original recordings are like hard to find and like really expensive. So the CD that, you know, the original CDs that aren't remastered because they're not being produced anymore are expensive. And I know I have a few of them in storage somewhere. So I'm looking forward to getting them back. So is it worth saving everything you have? No, but that's where it can come back to bite you.
Right. Well,
that's, you know, that's a pretty, you know, weird scenario, but
right. So I actually worked for 3 years, and a handful of people know this, and not everybody, because it's certainly just one of my past jobs. Actually, I left in 2004 before Fish. I left this job. I worked for a music licensing and publishing company that was in downtown Burlington. That relocated to Burlington after 9/11 because they were originally located in New York City.
Yep.
Well, this company relocated to Vermont, and what they did was actually they were music publishers, is what they were. And for anybody that's actually a musical artist may know what a musical publisher is. They're responsible for administrating copyrights for songwriters. Well, they actually administered the copyrights for George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic.
Okay.
And George, in his crack-induced haze back in the 60s and 70s, basically what was thought was signed away his royalties to the original record label owner, Armin Baladian of Westbound Records. They put out the first 4 Funkadelic albums. So basically, the story was, and basically in debt, crack-induced haze, George signed over his songwriting and his music publishing to Armin for perpetuity. So basically fast forward 30 years later, and we are administering not only his copyrights, but all of the derivatives from hip-hop and rap and funk and people that sampled it and interpolated it from artists, anyone from Ice Cube to Criss Cross to Notorious B.I.G. to all of the music that they were making, where they would lift samples and do different things. Snoop Dogg's first album has got 5 or 6 songs that are heavily P-Funk influenced. So it was kind of this really, really neat job that I did. And this was just as iTunes was really starting to hit and digital and streaming royalties were starting to come out. Well, regular music licensing, when that band whose T-shirts you're wearing sold an album back then, for songs 5 minutes and under, they would receive 8 cents per unit sold. So if you owned 100% of the song that you wrote, you would get 8 cents per record. And if you sold 1 million, you do the math, and it starts coming through. And there's also the master recordings, too, are what's owned, too. So it's 8 cents and 8 cents. So most likely the record label owned them. So it was a really, really neat job for 3 years. And one of the coolest things that I remember was when Jay-Z was releasing an album, and he was very, very conscientious about bootlegged release hitting the streets before it was due to release. At the time, it was Tuesdays, like when all the great releases came out, because it was just Friday recently. Yeah, it was the best thing was Tuesdays.
Fridays was movies and Tuesdays was music.
So right up until this was like just weeks before it was due to release, they flew someone up who pretty much had a briefcase on a handcuff attached to his wrist with a recording, and he came in and played a version of Jay-Z's proposed song that interpolated a Parliament song. And it was my coworker's responsibility to sit down and listen to the interpolation or the sample, and maybe it was a direct use of the master if they had permission. And then what the copywriter does, the music publisher does, is actually say, all right, well, this uses 50% of the hook, so we want 30% of the publishing for it. And that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of how this goes down. Well, I remember him having a two-way. This was advance of texting. He had a two-way communicator where he was basically texting with his record label. We brought him out to lunch at Necky when Necky was on the upper block of Church Street, and he was texting back and forth. He was basically did a private jet up to the Burlington airport, took a limo down to Burlington, carried this briefcase to our office for us to ask for how much we wanted in the interpolation. And my coworker couldn't find it, was the interesting thing. And he was listening for the music, and he wasn't listening for the vocal. And really what it was a vocal interpolation of one of the Parliament songs, and not the musical backbone. And that's what he was really, really good at. He's an incredibly talented musician, so his backbone was technology and whatnot. But I will always remember for this gentleman basically flying up with Jay-Z's version of the song. It was about to drop on a new release, and communicating on this two-way. And we asked him to stay longer, and he's like, my limo's waiting for me. I got to go back. But fast forward many, many years later, and this is really only in the last 5 years, Come to find out, and this is kind of an end around because George Clinton just announced that he is ending touring after 2018. And I think I saw him at a Lollapalooza in Montreal. I've always wanted to say I saw him, and I believe I saw him at a Lollapalooza in Montreal. But anyhow, about 5 years ago or so, it came to light that all of these quote-unquote contracts that George signed over to Armin were fraudulent. And it turns out that he never did sign over all of his copyrights. And I should also do a quick backtrack to say that while I worked for this company, we were involved in the largest hip-hop lawsuit in history in regards to copyrights and interpolation and sampling. And we had a law firm out of Nashville. We were involved in basically suing over 500 parties for all of these songs for either misuse of copyright or not signing contracts or not paying or whatever it was. And it was a huge lawsuit. And if you Google Bridgeport music and lawsuit, you'll basically read some of these depositions and what have you. But 5 years ago or so, it came to light that all of these contracts were fraudulent and George never did sign over his copyrights. And all of this was done essentially in error. We thought we were defending the copyrights for Armin, and Armin actually basically pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, including my boss, who was a 30-year friend and acquaintance of his, and she had no idea. And we basically, there was, I think, repayment. But George basically cleaned up his act over the last handful of years. He used to have the long rainbow-colored dreadlocks, and he was a mess. He was still arrested for crack and different things like that. Well, he basically turned his life around and fought for his copyrights through and through, and then it basically came to light, and he's still out touring and what have you. But it was this crazy, weird whirlwind job where I could say at the time in the United States, and her sons would handle this internationally, but it was myself and one coworker were the only two in the United States who basically defended these copyrights. And George Clinton is the most heavily interpolated and sampled artist in rap and music and hip hop. So it was kind of a neat position to be in, so to speak. And I was involved in musical copyrights and mechanical licensing. And they used to own not just obviously George Clinton, but a lot of gospel stuff from Detroit, which is where the label was from. So when you talk about songwriters and things like that, the Ohio Players are one of their artists, and the Ohio Players are one of 8 artists or 8 songwriters. So every song was divvied up, 12.5% a piece or whatever it is. Yeah. So when this, songwriter of yours, wanted to rewrite it, I know exactly what he was going through. And he's going from, 2.5 cents a piece to 8 cents a piece and re-releasing it and
there was
padding his pocket.
There was a little more to it. I think at the time there was a lawsuit going on between the bass player and the lead guy, the lead guitar player, the guy that basically owned all the rights to the name of the band. There was a little lawsuit going on, and I think he was just racing back to the studio to change things up to avoid some lawsuit stuff. But, it's just interesting how all that goes down. And it's crazy that you mentioned rap artists sampling things and how it must have got really intense when that became popular. When was it that it really, really started? It seemed like every new artist had a new song that was some kind of sampled stuff. But it's all hip-hop stuff that grabs old rock stuff, like a hook from a rock song, and they want to use the sample. And it just must have blown up. There must have been so many rap and hip hop artists that wanted to use samples, and it just gets really, really complicated with all of the logistics, the legal stuff that's involved. And there's got to be people slipping through the cracks, and constantly lawyers are on stuff and trying to, I think I've heard with the Vanilla Ice thing, there was that whole major lawsuit with the Queen, the
Under Pressure with David
Bowie. The Under Pressure
yeah.
thing, and he was like, oh, I just, they left off a note or something. There was all kinds of legal stuff that they go through. And it's just crazy to think about. It's so scary to get caught up in that kind of stuff. And would they come down on, when I play copyrighted music on my show, I try not to play full songs. I like to use just little bits. I'm not a radio show, but a music show. But I use little bits here and there, and I sometimes worry about it. I don't have that big of an audience, so I'm really not, I don't think anybody's going to be after me about it. But, sometime somewhere, if somebody wants to, hey, I want to take Joe Blow to court and make 10 grand, they can do that, right?
Right. Well, remember when BitTorrent was really, not that BitTorrent still isn't used to distribute copyrights illegally, but when Napster basically was out there and got shut down, and those following years were was it the IRCC? Is that what it is? Independent Record? I forget what it is offhand, basically came through and we're getting Susie Homemakers. We're basically suing Susie Homemaker because her son was at home, hosting his music catalog and putting it out there on torrents, and they would drop judgments of thousands of dollars per copyright. So if they would put out 500 songs, it'd be this $1 million judgment.
Nothing anybody could pay back.
It was ridiculous, and that's why the less sometimes you know about behind the scenes thing in the music industry, the better, because whether it's music copyright and licensing and sampling and clearances or that end of it, it's horrible. And then even as far as Spotify, I know a lot of artists that basically speak out about Spotify because they say that they're being paid basically nothing, tiddlywinks over it. Yeah, and I have too. And I also have an acquaintance who does booking and managing for bands, including some fairly prominent bands, who told me straight up, he goes, "Don't worry about it. They're getting paid." It's a much different thing than a mechanical royalty of 8 cents. And that's back when I worked for this company. iTunes was just coming out there, and the Harry Fox agency, who is basically the #1 music licenser out there in New York City, was still trying to determine how much to pay per stream, because someone buys an album, they can play it up 2 million times. Well, a stream is defined.
Absolutely.
It's once. So the time was, what's it going to be? And I still don't know what the mechanical royalty is, right? But it's say it's 0.005 cents per stream. But local artist, someone who I absolutely adore, now he's local, Ryan Montbleu, moved from Boston to here in Burlington, and I've heard him speak directly from the stage, basically saying that one of his songs made Discover Weekly on Spotify, and it got, as a result, it was actually his version of Fast Car with the band Tall Heights, which is amazing. Everybody should go listen to it on Spotify. Tracy Chapman did the original. We all know the song.
Absolutely.
But it paid his rent. His first 2 months, basically, he got paid by Spotify,
and then he
paid his rent.
Tracy Chapman's car payment.
It does work a little differently digitally, because they owned the master, but obviously not the publishing. So Spotify would have paid her, and then he paid for the master. But he said it paid his rent. So so I've heard directly that indeed, it certainly does pay. And Milton Busker, who does he's a local artist and a good friend of mine who does the title track for my other podcast, is on Spotify, and I know that he gets his pennies check here and there, but obviously he doesn't have the number of streams that's required to be paid. But
right, and I mean it's all relative, because I mean album sales these days are like in the tank. You know what I mean? Nobody really buys albums anymore. They don't buy physical media. All the record stores are closing down. So streaming is where it's going. So if you're getting something from that, it's something. I mean, you still have digital like album sales. Like I buy albums off of Google Play Music all the time. I do there's the survey app that Google answers or whatever it is. You answer questions in the survey, they give you money towards the Play Store. I buy albums all the time with that money. So I'm constantly buying albums digitally that I can play back at any time. I'm not streaming them from a service. But, if somebody chooses not to do that and they want to stream something and they want to hit play 15 times on the same song in a row, and each play is something for the artist, it's incentive to write good music, because you're going to get, massive plays on your streams. And like you said, if people are doing that, and like not just one person's doing that, but thousands of people are doing that, it all adds up, right? Now, I've heard artists say that there's no way that any artist these days is making what they used to make in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, when bands were huge and people would buy albums and records and t-shirts and concerts. Now everything is concerts and t-shirts. That's like where all the money is. So you have to tour. You can't just put out an album. And as I can say as an artist, it sucks that they have to go out there and do the actual physical work for what people make, especially huge bands. It's nice to know they have to go out there and do the actual work as a hardworking person myself.
Yeah, ticket prices, I tell you, are ridiculous, coupled with merch prices. And I just saw a major tour recently where the ticket prices was enough to offend. And then I'm looking at the T-shirts and they were $50 a piece, and I'm just shaking my head. And I'm like, people are going to be outside selling some of these for 10, 20. And sure enough, you step outside and T-shirts for 10 and hats for 10. But you're the one that turned me on to the Google Opinions Rewards, whatever it is, and I got like $30 in credit, and I didn't even know what to buy. It's the problem.
I totally had to kick mine down a little bit because I was worried about losing it. So I bought an album I've purchased in the past that I just don't have in physical form anymore, and I was like, you know what? it's time to give this band some money again, and I did it again. So,
and this is actually what I do nowadays, and I'm holding a CD from the California Honey Drops, a band who I just absolutely fell in love with when I saw them at Higher Ground. I go through Pledge Music nowadays, and when they basically put out their call for money, because they're self-releasing, Ryan Montbleu does it a lot, Caravan of Thieves, a band that I really, really like, I'll go in and I'm dropping usually about $25 while I'm holding a double CD autographed by the band. And I think that's kind of cool. I still do buy CDs, very, very few nowadays, but every once in a while I will pick up one where it's an artist near and dear to my heart. But Ryan Montbleu, I probably have at least 5 or 6 autographed CDs on my shelf, just because every time he drops a Pledge Music, and it's $20 or $25, I'm like, it's worth every penny. It's going directly to him. I'm getting something neat, that's kind of unique.
Yeah, there's something to be said for being able to contribute to something that you're interested in, if it's an artist or anybody, even though that they make like an okay living. I don't know how this artist lives, what his living situation is, but just being able to contribute to an artist that you like. I mean, that's kind of how it goes now. You don't have album sales. They have to make up for it somewhere else. Right. And they don't have big management companies and record labels backing them anymore. People are doing this shit on their own. The big bands still have that, but like the new people coming up don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. And what blows my mind, I always say I try to stay in tune with pop music or popular music, I should say, really, just to keep my ear open. I'm a wedding DJ on the side, whatnot. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, lives in Los Angeles. I just like to be in tune to what's going on. Every Friday, now that the new releases come out on Spotify, I go to the new release on Friday on Spotify, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? I just go through the list, and I sent out a tweet this morning, and I got to find out who it was. Ski Mask the Slump God, I swear, was this guy's name. Yeah, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Who is Ski Mask the Slump God, and is he any good? And I'm pretty positive. I'm just going to verify it now. Oh, here it is. I didn't have that many tweets today. I'm looking for some new music on the Spotify new release page. For some reason, Ski Mask the Slump God doesn't sound too appealing. But I'll go through.
Now I need to check it out. Now I need to see what this is. So I'm going to be YouTubing that on my way home.
Have fun with that. So, talking about hip hop, and I went through an interesting career. Obviously, involved that. I've been into rap and hip hop since '86. I'll always remember the Beastie Boys' "Licensed to Ill" coming out. I'll always remember
NWA
6th grade talent contest lip syncing, and 3 teams did "It's Tricky" from Run DMC.
Love that song.
I've been doing it for been around it for a long, long time, and I love hip hop and rap, and I've been fortunate to see Beasties and Tribe Called Quest, and I haven't seen Cypress. They were just in Vegas when I was out there, but I've been a Cypress Hill fan for a long time.
Me too.
Ice Cube, I did see Ice Cube in Lollapalooza '92. NWA, I remember listening to in high school, and this year's my 25th year high school reunion. So I've been big into hip hop and just music in general, but hip hop and rap for a long time. And I'll always say, generally speaking, I'm a huge fan of intelligent rap and intelligent hip hop. And so I've always loved the Beastie Boys. They were, in '86, they may have just had that hard party edge, but the later they got in their career, the more politically, outspoken they were, even in their vocals and whatnot. And they were always just this great band. So, I got into some of the Southern hip hop a little teeny bit. I cannot get into modern hip hop, a majority of it right now. And I don't even know what the heck they want to call it, but I keep giving it a chance over and over and over again. And I just don't get it. The mumble rap, I basically want to call it. And it's just,
it's like there's a new language out there that you don't know. Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm an old, curmudgeon-y old guy when it comes to music, and I'm stuck in like the stuff that I grew up with, and I do like some new music here and there. I'm a metal guy, but I don't listen to any new metal. I listen to the old stuff I grew up with. The new stuff that I listen to now isn't metal music. It's, I don't even know how to classify it. Just all music just seems to blend together nowadays. So like anything, just anything really. If it's good, I'll listen to it and I'll like it. Metal, I can't do any of the new shit. I'm just not into it. I like the way music sounded back in high school when I was in high school 20-something years ago. But new rap, I don't even think I know what any new rap. Oh wait, oh god, I think I did hear something about a new Kanye song, like poopity doopity scoopity whoopity, something like that. I can't. No, I can't do it. I can't do that, man.
It's tough because I really like Kanye West, and his first 2 albums came out, scary thing, and now early 2000s when I was working for this music publishing company, and I remember us having the first couple, and I was thinking, it was okay, and then I remember getting back into it when Gold Digger came out and kind of going back into
That's
his
a
back
great
catalog.
song.
His first 3 albums are musical genius. Just, he was a producer, he wrote all of his own, raps and produced all of his own tracks, and they were phenomenal. And then even 4 and 5 were okay, and then he just kind of went, where did Kanye go? Like, he's pushes the envelope so much, but I keep trying with most of it, and I just can't do it. And it was funny, I was in Frisco, Texas in October for work, and I had some beers, and it was after hours at a bar, and I remember going up to a DJ. There was a couple of DJs playing, and I remember turning to the guy I was with, and I was like, do you think they'd play a song if I wanted to request something? And he's like, no, they won't. I'm like, I'm going to go request something. There's no one in the bar. I might as well.
No. I'm going to go do it anyway.
A couple of young guys, and I went over and asked for Jurassic 5, and I love Jurassic 5. I've seen them 2 or 3 times. Can't wait for them to come back to Burlington. Just a great band. If all hip hop was like Jurassic 5, hip hop would be in much better position. Basically 2 DJs and 4 MCs, and they could all lead a band, and it's just phenomenal. And I requested Jurassic 5, and one of the DJs turns to the other guys and goes, I don't know who that is. And the other guy goes, I know who it is. What do you want to hear? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just play a J5 song,
Pick your favorite.
And so they threw on some J5 for me. So I went up afterwards, and I think I requested some Prince or something like that, and then probably even like a Justin Timberlake song or something like that. Just something I recognize. There wasn't that many people in the club. They're just kind of playing for themselves, and not that they were doing a poor job, but I just wasn't recognizing any of this mumble stuff that was going on. So they ended up shutting down. I proceeded to hang out with these guys for the next 2 hours, basically talking about modern hip hop. We went to another club together and hung out and drinking and had a good old time. But I was basically like, all right, man, explain Drake to me. Like, explain where the appeal of this guy Drake is. And I'm like, I just don't get it, like, at all. Like, I try to listen to him over and over and over again, and I deem him at the time almost unlistenable. Now, since then, I will admit, I've gone back to his first couple of releases, and I've listened to him, and they're like, all right, this is okay. But the modern stuff, like where he's setting these records, he's like most weeks #1, 20 weeks in a row, matching Elvis. When I hear things like that, it makes me upset. This is the one that just pissed me off 2 weeks ago. Post Malone just came out with a new album, and he set a record for most songs in the top 100 matching the Beatles. And that record set made me want to puke because I love the Beatles. And I was like, Post Malone? I mean,
that name alone.
Charts are so different nowadays. And we were talking about radio before we turned on the podcast, and what upsets me, and we were talking about, being a DJ and maybe a music consultant and whatnot. And, Led Zeppelin had 3 top 40 hits in their career. Yet modern album-oriented rock stations only add a song on if they are a top 40 charter. So it's like, all right, well, how do you deem that as worthy as your radio ad now, Mr. Music Programmer, but yet you don't hold the same for Led Zeppelin, who only had 3 songs. So if it was the same across the board, that means you're only playing 3 Led Zeppelin songs. And of course, that's not the case. They'll just open it up and play a dozen different Led Zeppelin songs. So I would love to program my own radio station, but it would be based on my own heart and my own ears. I always said, I don't play an instrument, but I know what I like to listen to and know what's got a good beat and whatnot, and what will actually crowd a dance floor, because I'm a wedding DJ a little bit here and there. But I would love to place my opinion out there on a radio station, and I've done that in the past. I was on St. Michael's College Radio for 4 years and played my own stuff. And just when it became no fun, when they were basically like, I just had my daughter who was just born, my 16-year-old, and they're like, well, do you want to be a dad or do you want to be a volunteer radio DJ? And I'm like, that's
volunteer,
the stupidest thing you can ever say to me. And you're not paying me. I'm doing this for my own fun.
Let's see.
And I have
raise
a newborn.
my spawn, my own flesh and blood, or come here and
Yeah.
in sweat blood for nothing.
Yeah. So I when the Radiator had first released, I had actually got into the Radiator as well, and I was doing that a little bit here and there. But, it's crazy, and we were talking about this when having all of the CDs. I used to tote all my CDs down to the radio station when I was doing it from 98 to 02 at St. Michael's College, because that's what you played on. And then when I was on the Radiator, I had them all on my iPod. And I had a 160 gig iPod with 26,000 songs on it that I still own, but I don't ever take it out anymore because now it's all Spotify. And
right?
It's all a big circle, and I just think of all of those CDs sitting over there on my bookshelves, and I have them all now on a device. It's about the size of my George Costanza wallet. And I don't take it out with me anymore.
And now you don't even need to take it out, because that's just another device, because everything's just going to pump through your phone.
Right.
The thing that manages your money, the thing that makes phone calls, the thing that gets your emails, the most crazy invention that we know today.
Thank God for it. Huh? Where would we be?
I'd still be hitting up payphones like a few times a day. I'd still be buying stamps. I'd still be going to the post office. I'd still be going to the bank. I'd still be doing a lot of shit that I don't need to do anymore. I am so grateful for the technology as much as I curse it.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, think about it. It's funny because I come across it vaguely every once in a while. You ask me for my address. Obviously, you've never been to the Riff On podcast studios before.
Can I stop you?
Sure.
I actually have been a delivery guy for the last 20 years, and I knew where this place was, although I did still put it in Google Maps just to be sure, because it's been maybe 15 years since I've been on this street.
All 10 houses, 12 houses. I never knew it existed before we bought the house, and we're going on 5 years now. And I love the neighborhood. I love the location. Unfortunately, the two roads that basically get here, one of them's a little rough around the edges, and that's why I never went up the road. And the other one, I always wondered, what was down this road? And I never did it until 5 years ago. And now I've just got this great little nook. I love where I live. I love being in Colchester. But I know someone who bought an Atlas recently. And I'm like, what? Like I have a GPS in both of our vehicles, actually. I just came across it the other day. I remember when I moved to Pennsylvania about 8 years ago, buying a GPS. And at the time, I'm like, this is the best invention I've ever seen. We actually bought a friend a GPS when he came down and visited when I lived down in Pennsylvania, and bought my parents a GPS because it was seriously the best invention ever when we started utilizing that technology in cars.
When I first discovered it, I was, like I said, I've been a delivery guy for the last 20 years. And we were using the paper map books and fold-out maps, whatever we could buy. But I was always a techie, and I saw this, like, people were buying GPS, like handheld GPS things just for, like, hunting and stuff, so they could track their, and I remember one friend raving about it. GPS, bro, GPS, global positioning satellite. I'm like, what? So I'm like, oh, so it's got this dot matrix black and white display on it that makes no sense to me. Well, I'm a techie guy. I'm into computers. So a few years down the road, the Windows mobile PCs first come out, the handhelds, the PDAs, we called them, personal data assistants. There was Windows came out with one, and there was the Palm Pilot. I don't know if you remember that. That was like a not so elaborate one. But the one I had a color touch screen. It was Windows mobile. Same, just shitty operating system, just like Windows 10 and all the like. But there was like attachments that you could buy for it. So there was this GPS receiver, and you could plug it in the bottom, and you could throw it on your dash, and it would grab GPS signals from the sky, and software it would come with. Now, they didn't have much storage capabilities on these devices back then, so you could only install the CDs that it would come with was all the mapping software for the entire United States and Canada usually. But you could only put certain states. It would let you grab a state and drag that to the device and put on until you could fill up, So you might have New England on there. You might have like 3-4 states. That might be all you get. But, I started using that, and it wasn't super elaborate because it was brand new. But it was like the shit. And I knew GPS was going to go somewhere. And then eventually they started making these dash mount things that had everything already pre-installed. And it's just the way it is now. It's funny because I was talking to my ex. We both worked at the same place. And there was this one old guy that still works at this place, even though we've all long gone. He's still there. He was old then, he's old now. But he's like, you can literally see him on the side of the road every once in a while, like using he's got a map book and he's got a magnifying glass. And I swear, I told her the other day, I go, because we were talking about him, I'm like, he is the only person that's keeping the company Jamapco in business right now because nobody buys maps anymore, you know?
It's an old guy that I knew that actually bought one, but he was talking about it. And I just saw one recently on the shelf in Walmart, and I just shook my head and laughed because we get 2 Garmin GPSs that were great and served their purpose.
Yeah.
My God, the worst part is, I spent 4 years living in Pennsylvania. I can't tell you one route number, but I can know where I was going because it always told me where. And it was a brilliant invention and worth every penny of the $150, $180. And you just think, Google Maps now, unlimited data. Everyone's got their phone hooked up to their dashboard, and
it doesn't
Uber
use much data to
it.
begin with. No. And you know what it does? Is it grabs your route and it stores it caches as much as it can. So even if you run out of service, it's still working. As long as you don't hard close the app and try to open it again. But, it's, I was just going to say something, but I lost it anyway.
That's all right. They're real time now. I just went down to Philly for the day job on Friday, and my boss's truck's got a GPS built into the dashboard with real time updates, traffic ahead. Accident ahead. Do you want to detour?
That's what I was going to say. That's what the map book won't do for you.
Right.
It won't detour you. It won't update you about things. But these do. They get live updates from servers and stuff.
It's incredible. Do you use Waze at all in your drive?
I did for a while, but I found that it was eating up the battery in my phone, and I was getting addicted to it. I was trying to beat people in miles per week and stuff. Like, it's crazy. It's competitive. It's actually not just a mapping software, and it's not just software that you can be notified if there's a police officer up ahead. It becomes a competitive thing, and I found myself being very competitive with it, and I had to get rid of it. I really did.
I forget I have it, and every once in a while when I'm driving and I'm approaching traffic or something like that, I know something is coming up, I will jump on Waze and see what it is. And then the other device I use, so to speak, for traffic updates is Twitter. And I wish more people would use Twitter because I'm a Twitter-holic.
I know.
But the first thing I do, especially on a route, if it's like the New Jersey Turnpike or something like that, and you can put in the search term very easily, I'll jump right in it and plug it right in, and I'll go through and I'll look for updates that way. But unfortunately, people don't use Twitter like I do, feverishly, so the updates are a little slow every once in a while, but people use Waze like crazy. And
Waze is where it's at. Like, I know that some people will create Facebook groups that are like Vermont roads, or New York roads, and it's like people post, hey, this one's closed down, whatever, jackknife, truck.
Speed trap.
But it's what are you gonna do? You to constantly be on that. You want alerts. If you turn on Waze, it tells you as you're going, and you don't have to worry about everything in advance. You worry about it kind of just as you're going.
Yeah. And speaking of Vermont roads, for those that travel around, you may be familiar with the Notch, which is 108 from Smuggler's Notch over to Stowe.
Absolutely.
It's now officially open. And the funny thing is for those out of towners, it's basically a plow will not fit through the notch.
No.
So they close it down over the winter. And this is basically, for someone who's in the north like me, it's a great way to get to Stowe, where the Alchemist is, and the other side of the ski mountain. I don't ski myself, but it closes all winter long. And just early last Monday or so, I was like, is the Notch open? And someone posted a picture of their bike at the top in a lot of snow. And they're like, no, it's not. And it's going to be a while. And our weather has, of course, changed much for the better in Vermont as of late. And 2 days later, it was like, oh, the Notch is open.
Yeah, it all melted. It all rolled down.
It's great. And now the running joke is how long until a tractor trailer gets stuck, because a tractor trailer will not pass through this notch. And not only that, but they get stuck in between the rocks at the top. And then Charlie Boy's a massive trucker, needs to tow trailer needs to go up there and basically yank them out backwards. And then they give them a pretty big bill.
I'm pretty sure one of their employees is constantly like, it's once the notch is open, there's like a lottery at the place where they work, and they're like, all your pages are on tonight. Whoever, when the truck does get stuck, someone's getting called. Somebody has to go to work. Don't drink tonight.
It's crazy. It's harrowing enough. I love taking out of towners through the notch. I've never been through there, because even driving a small car, it's a little crazy at times.
There's boulders on the side of the road, like massive boulders. They're not just rocks. They're boulders. They're over 20 feet high, a couple of them, I think. Maybe not that high, but they're freaking high. And they're huge, and they're not moving them. They're there.
And you can't see around them,
Yeah.
and it's one lane that basically passes through the two, and it's it's fun to see a passenger's face for the first time going through the notch, because if you've driven through it before, you can just kind of whip through it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great shortcut through from Smuggler's Notch over to Stowe, but it's basically closed for 5 months of the year, and the big thing is it's presently open. So VT Roads, that's like the big VT Roads update this time of year is, hey, the notch is open. It's
and the pictures will be in, and there's the shameful photo of the truck driver that decided to challenge the notch. The problem is they use car GPSs. They don't use truck GPSs. So a truck GPS, as a truck driver myself, wouldn't take you that way. It would say that's not a truck route. And
I did not know there was a difference.
There is, yeah. So they're using auto GPS. Sense. So it's a lot of like, I'd say they're independent contractor truckers. They own their truck. They sleep in their truck. They live in their truck. So anything that's in the truck is their responsibility financially. So they're just going to grab whatever they can. The truck GPSs are they're pricey. There
was a hockey bus that got stuck up there last year or two, and they all got out and took a team picture in front of the bus being stuck on the notch, and I think it went a little viral on
We're really
on
stuck, eh? Too. Yeah. What's that all about? I'm married to a Canadian. I can say that.
Speaking of which, I'm going to Edmonton next week for the very first time.
I'm so excited for you. I've always wanted to go to Edmonton, and I don't know anything about the place.
I don't know
anything.
I just like
either. The name of it. I like the Edmonton Oilers.
My family itself is very French. Actually, my parents just got back from Florida this past week. They're now essentially snow bunnies, and then go down to Florida every winter. But they live up here in a campground full time in the summer in a very, very nice parkside model RV essentially. But they got back Friday. My dad had a funeral up in Canada to go to Saturday. One of his aunts, one of my grandfather who's now deceased, one of his sisters just passed. So I've got a lot of family up there still, but it's basically Montreal and Quebec. My dad was raised French. My last name is very French, and we say we dumb it down so Americans can pronounce it. But and I learned over the course of time that, in Quebec, you're required to be bilingual. And I remember when the Montreal Canadiens hired an English-speaking coach about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was a big uproar over the fact that this guy could not speak French. And it's a francophone prominent, province or whatever, where it's required to be bilingual. And you go up there and you can get by in Montreal. And I've never really traveled to Quebec City itself.
I heard you can actually get by there.
You can get by pretty well because they all have to speak both. But former sister company of my day job has multiple locations in Canada. One of them's in Montreal, while the other one's in Toronto. And the guy that runs the Toronto office can't speak a lick of French. So it's like you get west of basically Montreal, excuse me, and French is like not even a prominent thing at all. So I'm looking at Edmonton thinking, what's Edmonton going to be like? All I know is the conference I'm going to, there's supposed to be a bunch of partiers and a real good time.
There'll be no French there.
There will be no French, thank God. There will be some people from the province,
sure,
from Quebec,
yeah.
but as I've been traveling for my day job, there's all these so far the past year, especially these locations where I was like, I never knew I wanted to go to X until basically I saw it on a map or I went. And Edmonton, just checking it out, I'm like, this looks like a really, really great city. And I'd never been, and now I'll be there Wednesday to Sunday morning next week already. And I'm like excited to, book travel. I love to travel. I'm flying in and out of Montreal, which Montreal Airport's fantastic. So it's about the next stop and the next place, and I've got no other future airfare on the immediate horizon. I got to Indianapolis, I think, this November, but loving it, eh?
I want to say...
I'm practicing.
Sorry, I want to say, every photo I've seen of Edmonton, and I could be wrong here, it seems like, you see like big cities, and then there's like all these highways leading to the skyline, to the big cluster of buildings. It seems like every image of Edmonton that I've seen has just been trees and like green, and then there's the city. I could be wrong on that. I could be thinking of a completely different city, but I think that's what I've seen from photos, and that's what's kind of appealing to me. That it's not so concrete.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Like there's a lot of green going on in there too.
Yeah, and not that this is an end around, because we talk about a little bit of everything on the Riff On podcast, but we usually talk a little bit about beer, and heck, the music opening involves around the cracking of a beer.
Yes. I
just need to shout out, I've had Idle Time going back for years now, including their first can, the Idle Time can, which was their original double IPA, and they changed from crop to Idle Time based around really the popularity of that. Also, the owners got out of it, and there was another crop brewing, so in order to avoid
which is
basically confusion.
Yeah,
they turned to Idle Time, but they just started canning. They're out of Speaking of Stowe. They're right around the corner from The Alchemist. And they just released cans a couple of months ago for the first time, and I had the Idle Time IPA cans, which was good, but it wasn't as good as I remember. But I can tell you, this is the first time I've had the Zog's APA, and this is fantastic.
It's super good, man. I hadn't had Zog's. I've had their other stuff, and I've just loved everything they put out. I mean, hey, maybe there's one I didn't like, but I couldn't even tell you which one it was at this point. But I was shopping for APAs for a little while. I was like, I'm sick of the heaviness of the double IPA. You just get it's still a little too boozy, and I don't know when I'm doing my own podcast and I want to drink beers, I get like this pasty film in my mouth when I'm drinking a double IPA, and it affects my speech. And it's actually happening to me right now just because I had too much alcohol. I did have 2 double IPAs at McGillicuddy's in Colchester. I had the Lost Nation Dippa. Was it Tossing Seeds? That's what it is. Tossing Seeds.
I have not seen that one yet.
9.7 or something.
Goodness.
Yeah, I had 2 of those, and then I went home for a little bit. So I've got the little bit of a mouth thing going on. But I was shopping for these because I was just shopping for APAs because I wanted to drink something that was not so heady and had like hop characteristics, the creaminess, not overly malty, and a little bit of punch to it, a little bit of hop, but not over the top. And somebody recommended this, and I tried it, and I do love it.
This is
it's good.
May 2nd. It looks like is the can date. I mean, I will
fresh.
Put this up there right now with, in my opinion, First Drop and Little Wolf, which are 2 of my favorite Vermont APAs.
I'd say
This
First
is
Drop
fantastic.
It is in that same class. I'd agree because I do love First Drop, but I've had so much of it, and I just decided I wanted to try something different. I mean, this was side by side with First Drop when I bought it.
And these are, really kind of small batch in comparison to where Upper Pass is brewing and canning at Von Trapp, also in Stowe. But Will Gilson is the head brewer at Idle Time, and I've had a chance to meet with him and been to formerly Crop, Idle Time a handful of times to eat and have beers, and their beers are always good, and the food's always good. But this is great. I mean, I would suggest this to everybody. I remember picking up the Idle Time IPA and commenting over at 802 BWS about the price, and the price was great.
Yeah, I'm going to say
nice thing too.
I want to say the price point on this. Like, I think the most you'll ever see this going for is $11.99 a 4-pack.
Fantastic price. Yep. And speaking of prices, I don't know if you saw this tweet earlier today, but this was a trending moment in Twitter, and I think everybody can relate to this. I'm hoping it's still out there. Actually, it'll be in my most recent tweets. So one of the moments today was cheap chicken wings are here to stay as prices hit a 4-year low. I'm a huge chicken wing fan.
I am too.
Absolutely love chicken wings. So it was my Twitter, it wasn't a Twitter profile. It may have been my Facebook profile for the longest time, in the eternal search for the best chicken wing and the best IPA, which I still am. So when I read this moment, I actually quoted it and said, now if Dippa 4-packs could hit a 4-year low too, because we all need cheaper chicken wings and double IPAs.
We got to make those hops cheaper. Otherwise, we're going to be paying more and more for these 4-packs, unfortunately, right?
And the worst part is the hops aren't getting cheaper, and neither is aluminum and steel, thanks to our tariffs.
Right.
And the prices seemingly are going to be going up. That's been the good thing. I just hit, I was 17 days beer free, which means I wasn't buying beer, which was nice, because that's, face it, a 4-pack is 6-pack.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Do you find yourself eating some more food? Kind of picking up the flack on your spending with food?
No. When I hit it well and don't drink well, I'm eating well too as a result. So very well. I lost 14 pounds in 2 weeks, I think it was. A lot of inflammation and beer weight essentially shed, and then I went out Wednesday, Thursday, not quite Friday, Saturday. I just had creamies for this 2 days in a row. But anyways, I was trying to get back on and kind of slim down a little bit for Edmonton, actually, because I bought all of these dress clothes, so to speak, last September. And over the winter, I just was putting all of this weight back on because, heck, a 4-pack of double IPAs is not calorie-free, unfortunately.
Oh, hell no.
Who knew? I mean, no idea. A 6-pack of pale ales, also not calorie-free.
No.
So I got on the scale recently before a flight to Las Vegas, because I was weighing my suitcase. And I'm like, so I had to step on first to determine the difference. And I'm like, I hope that's an error. But of course it was not. And that's why, of course, my clothes were starting to get a little snug again. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to come back from Vegas and it's going to be like my grand hurrah. And I'm going to get back on the wagon, so to speak. And that's what I did. So I just hit, it was nice. It was 17 days in a row. And then unfortunately I got drunk on Wednesday night because I hadn't been drinking for 17 days. And also vodka tonics and wine and double IPAs, don't combine as great as I thought they did, but I had a good buzz going and it was a lot of fun. And now I got to get back on the horse for the remaining 8.
Yeah, I have to get back on that horse myself. I did the 30-day challenge, and then I'm not like back on every day like I was for a while. And I mean, and every day, not meaning like I'm drinking a 4-pack of double IPAs every day, but having some kind of beverage. I got to get back on there. It's really tough. I think in the summertime coming around, now is the time when I want to be out doing things with my friends, and like,
that's it.
I don't know. It's a tough thing. It really is tough.
I just got into seltzers. I hated seltzers for the longest time, and I finally started drinking seltzers. It was funny because I returned all my bottles somewhat recently, and my bottles and cans are a good collection of decent beer. Like I went to Treehouse recently and basically had 2 cases of Treehouse to return. Fortunately, Beverage Warehouse takes everything.
Yeah.
But these kids just came around raising money for like Colchester softball, and all I had was seltzer cans to give her because I was in the middle of my bender here, or drink free, what have you. But yeah, so I can't even remember where exactly I was going. But
were they like, where's all the weird cool cans?
No, they didn't know any better. And I'm like, I just returned my cans, but here's all my empty seltzers. So I've been drinking those a lot. I've been drinking. I just was gifted 8 pounds of incredibly good, fresh, kind coffee. What did you think I was going to say? And
I was hoping for something else.
Freshly roasted coffee. Hey,
coffee's just as good.
Amazing. So I've been drinking a ton of coffee and seltzers and not beer.
So you're gonna send me? I guess some kind of consolation prize for being here, right? It's coffee.
It's coffee. I'll send you home with a party gift. Oh, so anyway, so I basically was saying, I don't want to drink, really Monday to Thursday. My main thing was I was thinking I don't want to drink home alone. And so I actually it's funny, I came down here to my office last night with a can and I actually set it down and was going to open it. It was like 9:00 and I just kept holding off and I kept holding off and I kept holding off. And like 75 minutes later, I put it away unopened and I was like, all right, because I was trying to get back on the wagon. And the funny thing was I had already determined, I had 2 pieces of homemade pizza before I left for baseball practice tonight. And my son's baseball practice, not mine, but I am one of the coaches. And when I'm eating healthy, I don't even eat the pizza. I'm like, cheese free. I'm carb free, basically.
You have way more willpower than I do.
It's hard, but once you get into it and you see the results, it's very easy to kind of keep it spiraled. So
it's true.
I happen to have 2 pieces tonight. I'm like, all right, so be it. It was looking so good. It just came out of the oven, and then lo and behold, I get that message from you to sit down and get behind the mics, and I'm like,
that's
all right. I'm
already
off
like,
the
I'm
off
throwing
the
at you. I'm like, riff on? Question mark.
Right.
I wasn't saying like let's do a podcast. I was just feeling like, where are you, bro?
Tell me about it.
And then you're like, oh, I should. And I was like, I want to do one.
It's so hard to get behind the mic. It's crazy because the summer hits and we all have lawns to take care of and families. And say I not accidentally, I volunteered, but I'm now an assistant coach on my son's coach pitch baseball team, and I just got named full-time pitcher tonight because apparently I'm doing so well. But these kids, it's 3 practice, 2 games, and a jamboree this week. Granted, we only have like 4 or 5 weeks of this, but I've got a practice or a game 4 nights a week. I've been traveling a lot for personal, professional, what have you. Mel and Andy, same day jobs, kids. Andy's gigging. We just can't get behind the microphone. Granted, they live 35 minutes away. And
I totally understand it. That's why I had to end up doing my own, like doing a podcast by myself. And it's so hard to get down there and sit down and be able to talk. My newest one I did was like an hour and a half. I think it's the longest I've done by myself. I could have kept going, but, I'm talking about me, so how am I going to run out of material? But, when you try to come up with topical stuff and be alone, I guess I could do it. But, it's really nice to have somebody to bounce off of, and if, it's hard to get everybody in the same room at the same time, it's almost impossible. That's why it's almost crucial to have, like, some kind of on-the-go kind of setup, like, because you could be like, hey, man, shit, we're camping, but I got mics.
Yeah, right. Why not? Huh? Hey, I'm still waiting for that first roving podcast.
Dude, I want to do it. I was going to suggest
nice.
it tonight, but I'd rather do that on I want to get up in the morning. I want to get up in the morning on a weekend or something when either of us have any responsibilities, and we could just go get a coffee and then just roll. We'll do like a Jerry Seinfeld, comedians in cars getting coffee, but minus the comedians.
Vermonters and getting beer, which I've actually talked about with Andy and Mel going and doing, actually even with you going out and doing something on the side, just, recording or whatnot, at a brewery or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be fun. So, yeah, I mean, I've thought about that, and I've thought about just getting behind the mic, and I do 2 podcasts, and I haven't been able to do either of them for the last 2 months, 3 months. When I guested with you is the first time I've been behind the mic in ages, and I've thought about just turning it on and sitting here talking, but I don't like hearing myself ramble.
It's hard to get used to talking to nobody when you got to pretend somebody's sitting there or somebody's listening to you.
Yeah.
When they're not even going to be listening to you till after the fact.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess you get used to it.
There's a certain gift, and Friday morning I got up at 4 in the morning. I was on the road at 4:30 and flicked on ESPN radio, which is what I prefer to listen to, just for company or whatever. Plus, I'm a huge sports fan.
Sure.
And Mike Golick Jr. is on, I guess, by himself now, and just listening to him talk, and he's really good, and like his dad is pretty good too. And of course, his dad always has a partner usually in the morning, but Mike Golick Jr. is on talking to himself, and it's like, God bless him. It's difficult. I mean, he's got every resource in the book, though. He's got a producer, and he's got research. And he's got,
I know.
It's
People
totally
hand you
different.
things. You got a computer screen right there, and things just pop up, and you're like, boom, there's something else to talk about. There's something else to talk about. There's my correction. There's this, there's that.
It's none so hard, but it's fun. Even just before we turned on the mics, and it was like, what are we going to talk about? And I knew it wasn't going to be an issue. Now it's a matter of, what do I call this podcast? Or what was it we talked
There's no
about?
theme. There's no topic.
There's not, which has been part of yours. You just kind of turn it on and go and just give it a witty title. I name it after. Whatever. Exactly.
I figured, what was the majority? What was the bulk of the content? We'll call it something related to that.
Exactly. And that's what I'll end up doing with this too. But, right before we turn it on, what are we going to talk about? And we started talking about Eddie Vedder and the drawing on the wall.
That's all I needed.
And here we are an hour later, and we're still just talking around and around and around. And music, obviously a good chunk about music, but Vermont and travel and beer and what have you. And,
I've thought about maybe making my show kind of just pushing it towards music and have it, because everybody loves to talk about music, even if you especially if you like every kind of music like I do. Like, I pretty much love everything except country, but I don't hate all country. It's just not it's my least favorite genre, so I know the least about it. But like, I just think I could go on and on and on about music with anybody that came over, even by myself if I had to. So I might actually push mine a little more towards that direction at some point when I start running out of stuff about myself to talk about.
Hey, why not? And that keeps Andy busy on the side. He's usually, either I should say performing with his wife as the Owl Stars, or performing by himself a lot with Troy Millette as of late. And he does his own podcast where he hosts artists in the local haunt, and keeps him super busy. And I love music, period. Yeah, local music, national music. I always used to say anything but country, but I found this modern, outlawish country genre all of a sudden into, and I'm being picked on by someone I may live with in this house who says, you always hated country music. And I'm like, this isn't country music.
If it's outlaw
and
country,
like,
you have to show it to
music.
me, because that's the stuff that I do, like the old school outlaw country guys.
You gotta pick up tickets to see Sturgill Simpson at Ben and Jerry's. I've been listening to him today. 2 live shows that just popped up on Panic Stream. I already couldn't wait because I've already been a fan, but he's just kind of opened up a little bit more of a jam and harder edge, and he's phenomenal, and it's going to be a great show at the Shelburne Museum. And I got turned on to him. He just sat in with Widespread Panic actually at this festival where these streams are from. Great stuff, and he's getting out there, and so I'm starting to discover a little bit of. It's not. What I say is, it's not twang country, it's not pop country, it's not I want to check you for ticks country. It's truly, modern Waylon Jennings type of thing.
Yeah, dude, and if you are into that outlaw
stuff.
Country kind of stuff, and especially the old guys like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and all those guys, I suggest that you check out Mike Judge's Tales from the Tour Bus.
You were talking about that your last podcast, and I was on an airplane, I want to say. This is where I watch all my TV, on an airplane, because I don't have cable at home.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in front of a screen on my recent trip to Vegas, and I'm just going through the screen in front of me, and it was on. And I had no idea that it was A, animated, nor B, about mainly country artists and outlaw country artists. And I was so close to starting it, but I was like, ooh, Lucifer. Because I really got into Lucifer the first season, and that's where I've been watching all my Lucifer episodes. And lo and behold, it actually just got canceled the other day. And I'm frowny face. I actually kind of liked the show for some weird reason, but I've watched... I talk about not having any time with my life. I mean, I got rid of cable 7.5 years ago.
You
probably.
should have all kinds of time in your life now.
I do not turn on the television at all, except for football season, basically. And why is it I still don't have any time to do anything? I come downstairs to my office, and actually tonight, and I've got to do this afterwards, we're recording this on a Monday evening, I post a new blog post on my blog for my second podcast every Monday night. It goes live every Tuesday. So I've got to do that tonight afterwards, because I dedicate myself every Monday night to this. And every Tuesday we post something new, and it's going great. And August is 2 years, and we've been doing this, every Monday night. It's a great habit. And I've been trying to find myself a schedule for everything. And this is the only one I've stuck to, but I want to find like a podcast night, and it's
too hard. You'll never get it. Trust me.
It probably is. That's the problem. And my other podcast, the amazing thing is how I record is because my signal is not good down here through Wi-Fi. We actually do Facebook Live, chat face to face. She's 3,000 miles from here in Portland, Oregon.
You each record on your own end.
We each record on our own end, and she sends me the audio file, and we piece it together, and we just talk live, and so we can at least interact and see what we're doing. And
that is absolutely
it works great.
That is absolutely the number one way people do it. Is that they'll either do it through Skype, phone call, whatever can connect you to, and then you just record on each of your own ends, and somebody puts it together on one end or the other.
It's worked great. I mean, numerous people that are like, "You're not in the same room." Like, no,
nope.
It's
at least a very common thing.
Yeah, it's great. And we try to do Skype, but my signal is so bad here that I just can't depend on it. So we use my data connection from my phone, and each talking to our own separate microphones that our computers record, and piece it together. And thank God for Audacity, and it works wonderful. We
I always forget about that software being free. It's a great piece of software.
It's a fantastic software, and I'll put this, I'll plug this into Audacity. Chances are I'm not going to fix anything really. I may try to clear up some of those F-bombs you had to drop. We had a family-friendly show going until
I forgot to ask you before I started.
I'll let it.
I didn't do too many, did I?
No, there's only about 4 or 5 I got to find.
4 or 5. I just got to
find like a duck call or something.
Before I came over, I was like, ask him if it's family friendly, and I forgot to do that. How many more F words can I get?
There's not many. There's not many, and it's only mainly for iTunes.
I apologize.
I just keep it on the family friendly.
You'll have to mark that particular episode explicit. Actually, I don't think you can do that. I think you have to mark your show.
It's like explicit. Exactly. It's all or nothing. So I'll go through and I'll edit it, and I'll probably give it a listen anyways, just to hear where we were, and also to create show notes and whatnot. But I'll go through and be like, there's one to find.
Do you have a bleep sound effect?
I'll find one.
Bleep bleep. I could probably email you one.
I should find a guitar riff, actually. I'll take a guitar riff and I'll compress it, and it'll be right in the middle over Pauly's F-bomb.
I apologize for the F-bombs, folks. If Eric didn't manage to miss one, I apologize if your kid's in the car.
Yeah. I will find a way to creatively edit it. I'm not too worried about it. So what I've been having a good time on is even the last one. I was all excited when I sat in with you at your studio, and Kate came down and sat in. I was like, I can't wait to sit down and listen to this, because it's you just kind of get into the flow of things when you have that co-host, and you just when you can talk about anything freely and openly, and it's really enjoyable, and you kind of lose track sometimes about where you go. So I sat down and listened to it, especially after whatever, a couple of beers, and I was like, wow, we talked about that. I was like, all right,
yeah, it's cool. Fun to check back on them after a long time has gone by, just to hear what some of them I don't listen to. I'll listen back as I'm editing, and once in a while I'll listen to a whole show if I thought it was going to be a good one. Like I was telling you, I think this before, if I've had a guest on and things were just going so rapid fire back and forth, I'll actually forget whole segments of what we talked about, and I actually want to go back and listen to it just to see how it went, because I don't even remember it as it happened. You know what I mean? It's hard. especially when you have 3 people on the microphones. And it's like at some point I'll have 2 people doing a conversation that I'm not even involved with because I'm doing something on the computer to cue something up, and I'm like, I miss out on some of this stuff. So I do like to listen back every once in a while, just hear how it goes. And quality control. So if you're not checking back on your stuff every once in a while, you don't know if you've got a problem with something, right? You could sound great in your cans while you're recording and everything goes hunky-dory. You post it, and then somebody comes back to you and goes, yeah, that one person you had on, like their microphone was weird and you didn't even catch it. You know what I mean? And you never know. Little stuff. It's good to quality control your stuff.
Yeah. Where was I? I was driving the other morning and tried tuning one in. And I wasn't really into the, it wasn't you, obviously, because your production is always A1, but I was listening to something. And I was like, it sounds really low. And I started something else, and I was like, this is really low, too. And I was like, oh, it's my volume on my phone because I was playing through my Bluetooth. So then I went back into the original one and started it. And it's the Jam Bass podcast, which is very jam oriented. A lot of the bands that I like, Fish, Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers, that type of thing. Yeah. They just started one finally. I mean, really, they just started somewhat recently, and I've been listening to those. They were really good. And there was another one I was listening to too, but it ends up being like now too much. I jumped on actually Netflix last night while I toyed with opening this beer. I opened up Netflix, and I was going to start Netflix, which I've had for years and years and years and years. And the worst part with Netflix, I'm always like, there's too much, and at the same time, there's also nothing I want to listen to or watch. So I just sit there and browse. I mean, I must spend a half an hour looking through Netflix to find absolutely nothing.
I turn on Netflix every night to find a cheesy horror movie to fall asleep to, because I find that they all grab my attention, at least for the first 20 minutes. They're somewhat interesting while they're setting up the plot line. And then they just get so stupid that I don't pay attention and I fall asleep. But I burn through them so much that I spend my time looking for something new every night. And I actually have put myself to sleep. The last few nights, I have put myself to sleep searching. I never even got to anything. And I'm like, I'm too tired. And I put it down and went to bed after like 25 minutes of searching. That would have been the time that I would have used to watch the crappy B horror movie. But instead, it was all spent on searching, and I finally was just like, my eyes were too heavy, and I just put it down. So Netflix, I think I'm just going to get screen caps. I'm just going to screen cap all the Netflix things that I can. Screen cap. I'll save it, and then I'll just, when I want to find something to go to sleep, I'll just open up my screenshots, and I'll just cycle through it like I'm searching on Netflix, and I'll fall asleep that way.
It's like the old Polaroid of the refrigerator.
Yes.
You used to open the fridge and go through it and be like, just take a picture and put it on the front of the fridge, and you know what's in there. Here's maybe someone's doing this, maybe they're not, but if they're not, this is an A1 podcast idea. Is there a podcast out there that's reviewing and or teasing podcasts?
No, hey,
new releases.
That would be a good thing, because I have actually found quite a few decent podcasts that were recommendations from friends. I found a lot on my own, but that was from digging. Like I use like TuneIn. Have you heard of TuneIn Radio?
Yep.
I'll use TuneIn Radio and I'll type in a couple of things that I want to hear about. Generally, it will bring back podcasts, just segments of podcasts where people have actually talked about those sorts of things, whatever I've been searching for. I listen to the segment, and then if I think there's podcast is good, I end up subscribing to it. So that's how I've been finding a lot of the ones on my own. I mean, I take recommendations, of course, and I do have a bunch in my queue that I listen to because of recommended, they were recommended by friends. But yeah, that would be great. A great idea for somebody to do a show about that. Be like, here are the ones that I took my time out this week to select for you guys, and these are the top ones that I think are decent. Check them out. Well, this is what it's about. And, it'd be nice if they would give you a little kickback on that, right?
Maybe even a snippets, and there's probably a legit audience there for it too. You would think, because that's my thing. Is like, I'm looking when I'm usually, I'm not saying this, but driving, or I'm of course in need of a podcast. Yeah. I'm like, what do I listen to? And I'm like, I've got all my saved on my Pocket Cast, and I'll just jump on real quick and look through, and it's like, all right, Joe Rogan, nothing recently. And nothing recently, that type of thing. So I'm kind of like, I'm stuck. And you can go to, and I'm a Droid user, so I don't have the iTunes store where you've got a huge home page type of thing. But I subscribe to Stitcher and whatnot, and there's just so many choices out there. If anything, there's just too much out there.
There's way too much. It's definitely a saturated thing.
It's hard to find, and they're saying Of course, podcasting's in its relative infancy. It's only going to get more and more popular, which is going to make more difficult of a time for those, if you want to monetize it and break through to actually do
and
that.
And not only that, even if you want to just do a free one like I'm doing, like I paid for all my equipment and I'm putting one out there, you're doing the same thing. It's going to cost more money to do it even.
Right.
Like it's going to get more expensive because everybody wants to do it. And that's what happens with everything. When everybody wants to do something, it costs more money. So just podcasting is going to cost money. It's going to turn, it's funny. It's going to go full circle. Radio is like dying and, terrestrial radio is going away. It's becoming podcast format as far as talk radio goes. It's going to go for full circle and everybody's going to go to podcasts. And then that's going to be too expensive for people like you and I to just do on our own. We'd actually have to work for a company that produces podcasts, much like the conglomerates that would, run radio stations. It's just gonna go to where the podcasts are, and that's what I think anyway. When it's so popular, that's all people listen to now. Nobody really listens to
seemingly,
talk radio people on radio.
Yeah, there's so many like just ESPN and sport based, the Ringer and the Athletic and just stuff that I. Just from Twitter, seeing podcasting and whatnot, them talking about podcasting, or I can't even keep up to that, nor do I have a chance to even listen to them. But have you done anything with Anchor yet, or looked into Anchor at all and their podcasting mechanism? So
briefly, very, very briefly over the weekend, checked them out based on somebody that reconnected with me on Instagram that I hadn't talked to in like 15, 20, actually longer than that, maybe 30 years. And 25 years or so. And she was wanting to start a podcast, saw that on my Instagram, I put myself as a podcaster. And she was like, great, I have questions, blah, blah, blah. What's the best way for me to go? I was looking at this thing called Anchor and I was like, well, I'll check it out. So I went to the website real quick and I don't know. It looks like a basic thing where you do it from your phone.
Yep.
And then you just like hit done and they just put it out there. So you have like no breaks, no editing or anything is involved. So,
right.
I like to hear production value when I'm listening to a podcast.
I do too.
When I know somebody sat there and done a little bit to it, at least that's a little more appealing to me than just, rifling off into your phone. Now, if you had the craziest content in the world that was just like, I just can't stop listening to this, I wouldn't care what you were using to record it. But let's face it, those people have big time jobs in radio. You don't have typical podcaster out there with so much good content that you could be listening to it through a transistor radio and be like, this is captivating,
Right. Yep.
So
agreed. Yeah, I've signed up and looked at it and thought about it, and it's yet another way to stretch yourself thin. So I haven't turned it on or done anything. Heck, I can't even sit down with a friend and co-host and nail down something consistently. So it wasn't anything I was going to dive into, but. It's certainly being promoted as a good gateway to, for novice podcasters, so to speak. But,
yeah, it makes it all easy. So you don't have to learn about RSS feeds and, websites and all that stuff. It's like you just get right to the nitty gritty, which is what a lot of people want to do. They don't want to deal with sitting on their computer, figuring out where to post this thing. When I first got into podcasts, I was like, I don't understand how this works. So wait, I create this file. Like I know I create the actual audio file. But where is it? Is it on my computer? Like, I didn't understand that it had to go somewhere and then be grabbed from that place. So I had to pay somebody to store my material. I didn't really understand that. So then I had to learn how to do all that crap. And, it's fine. I like to learn new things, but I really just wanted to get to podcasting. So I think that's where Anchor is going to be. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's going to appeal to people. People that they don't even care. Like, oh, I don't really have a budget anyway, which a lot of people don't. So they're going to be like, well, I don't have to buy a microphone if I do that because I can just use my phone and they'll make money on it. I don't know how many people listen to the podcasts because I don't know how good they'll sound. But, and they also, I think from what I read on their website, it was like unlimited hosting. So you could just put out as many shows as you wanted to and you didn't have to worry about that stuff.
Right. Well, truthfully, it's a set of earbuds with a microphone, which, the quality is not horrendous if you're talking into it and you're stationary and you're not, your background noise is not horrible. You can certainly get some decent quality, things, but production value is something that I certainly listen to too. I remember sitting down. I found a random podcast one day, and it was a top 10 rock and roll list, like overrated bands. It was something which should have been fun, and it really ultimately was. And I was hoping, of course, and as I'm still really novice at this, I was thinking they were going to be playing a lot of the music, but of course it's a copyright.
Yeah, a lot of people shy away from that,
which you really ultimately should.
You should.
I've got a copyright background and publishing background, so I should know that. Yeah.
If you think your podcast is going to get a lot of listeners, stay away from that copyrighted stuff.
But these guys were just not even great on the mic. One of them was sick, so he was sniffling the whole time, and the production wasn't there. And I put up with it because ultimately, and you and I have talked about this in the past, I mean, if the content is there, you're going to listen. I mean, someone is going to listen. They're going to put up with the sniffles or the background noise or whatever it is.
Exactly, because they're taken out of that.
Right. So, but if you're trying to grasp someone who's just kind of passing by, they may be tuned into the fact that of quality may be much more important to them. So they may be like, all right, well, this sounds good. I can sit down and listen to this. It's like an audio recording, type of thing. Someone's reading an audio book or what have you. So I try to be conscientious about, the production that I put out there. So I wanted to make sure that, as a passerby that may just, turn on the podcast and, this sounds good.
Absolutely.
I listen to the voice.
It's sad, but unfortunately, I mean, I try to give every podcast that I check out the benefit of the doubt. But I got to tell you, the first thing I listen to is what the production value is, what the quality is like. I mean, ultimately, it's about content. But the first thing I listen for is that. It's the first thing I check out. It's not the thing that makes me decide whether I'm going to listen to it or not. But it's the first thing I notice. So if you can give me a good production to begin with, it sounds good. It's not, I don't know. I couldn't even give you an example of what I'm talking about. But it sounds like somebody's talking through a telephone. I don't want to hear that. Like, I can't really listen to that for long periods of time, so I'll listen for that. But as long as it's nice and clean, it's not too loud, it's not too soft. I think the softness is the big thing. A lot of people don't do their stuff in post. I'm not going to get into technicalities, but there's a lot of things that people don't do to boost the volume. It's tough when you're in a truck that's as loud as mine, and the volume, the radio is so horrible as it is. You can't turn it up any louder than it already goes, and I can barely hear the people. That I have to download an app that will boost my volume so I can hear people talking. I mean, I get that with a lot of YouTube videos as well, but little things like that will turn me off. If I have to worry about trying to manage the quality on my end, I just want to hear the content, so I want it to sound at least halfway decent to begin with. Right.
And there's, of course, with any certain technology nowadays, there are people to help out. And I was just listening to a friend's podcast, and I've guested with him before, Mike Rosica, and he goes by Young Architect, and he's youngarchitect.com, and he just hosted his 50th episode, and he basically interviewed himself. He normally interviews other people, which is why I was on it before. But he talked about how consuming it was. He had no idea. He basically, now he subs everything out, but he has somebody that does all of his post for him.
Yeah.
He has someone that does all of his show notes for him. He does someone that does, everything. And basically, and as it is, he's already spending a lot of time doing the interviews and setting up all the prep and what have you, but he takes the raw files and everything and he sends them off to them. But he's spending basically, I forget what he said, he's spending $200 an episode to produce these, but this is his job and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
he's got an income doing it.
I would love to get to that point, obviously, but with the hobbies, this is all just a hobby.
Same, dude. It's a hobby when it comes down to it. But it's fun, It's some people argue it's therapeutical. It's nice to get down and talk on a microphone and talk about things that you would normally talk about with other people, but people that live such high-paced, fast lives like ourselves. I mean, sure, we love our spouses and we talk to them all the time. Sometimes we want to talk to other people. And you can't necessarily
love it.
Get, in the same room with somebody else. And it's nice to be able to just use the microphone as an outlet.
It's been great. I mean, probably quite literally the day I left, your place and hanging out with you and Kate, and I had a fantastic time. It's like I almost wanted to buzz you the next day and be like, that was awesome. When are we going to do that again? Just because, I mean, I enjoy hanging out with you personally and professionally, enjoy the podcasting. We've got a lot of mutual interests, but it was literally like, this was great. I would do it again. I would have done it again the next day. I would have done it again the day after. I mean, it would have been like, this has been it's just fun. So I was psyched to, I'm on the baseball field and I pull out my phone to check the time and I got a message from you and I'm like, hey, it's Pauly. And it's like, Riff On. I'm like, sure, when? Not knowing what your intent was, but I knew you were kind of bugging me about, doing a podcast. And it's like, I've been wanting to and I've been trying, and it's a matter of getting the guys together. I mean, heck, I think the beers we have sitting out in front of us, I remember buying some of them and messaging them being like, I have beers for the next time we get together, and we haven't had a chance to get together. It's just life in general. I would like nothing more than to do what my other podcast does for a living. This is a hobby, and just talk and entertain, so to speak. And, it would be great.
I would love to just like shoot the shit with everybody on a morning, daily basis. Like, I would love to do a daily show, even if it was only 3 days a week. I would love to do it in the morning. Would be my ultimate. Like, get up, take a shower, get dressed, coffee, sit down, and just chill with a couple people and talk about, like, just throw a freaking news feed up of the day before's news or something and just talk. It would be great. I don't think a lot of people listen to it, but it would be fun for me.
Right. It's all about being able to professionally just do it recreationally and have the time for it, or being able to monetize it or do something with it. It would be great, and I would love to see this any podcast I'm affiliated with get to that level. But I'll take what I can get, and it's been a great excuse to get together with Andy and then Mel and now you. I mean, I'll just take it just because I realize that. And one of the tough thing was, as I'm 16 days deep of not drinking, how drinking has been, I at least correlated a little bit with socialization and whatnot. And we joked during our podcast that I did with you about how fun alcohol is ultimately, but how social it is. And, for 17 days, I went to a club, went to Higher Ground back-to-back nights, but I didn't drink early on. But overall, I'm in, night out. I'm not out. I'm not sharing a beer. I'm not hanging out with anyone. And I was missing that aspect of it. So
I found that when I took my break, at first it was tough to go somewhere and be social and not have some beers. But after a little while, it was like just whatever I was drinking at the time, coffee, seltzer water, soda, whatever I was having. It was just fine. I was fine talking to people. I knew I was going to have to be where I was at anyway. It was like, just became whatever. I just didn't care.
I sent out a tweet about a seltzer sharing group. Now that I got into seltzer, I'm like, I got all these beers.
Of course you
beers. Coffee, totally. But up until maybe about 4 PM, I could drink decaf. I never quite understood the point. But I ran over to the grocery store to pick up some iced coffee. And I actually want to buy myself an iced coffee maker, but I went and bought some pre-made iced coffee just because it's there and ready for me. And I have that now for the afternoons. But good hot, somewhat recently roasted coffee for the mornings, and then I've turned that into iced coffee in the afternoons, and it's all a different vice. So
yeah,
to speak.
dude, it totally is. And I'll tell you, I love coffee.
Me too.
I could stop drinking anytime as long as I can have coffee all freaking day until I get to the point where I've got the shakes. Then it's like I got to stop.
I haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's funny. I first held off on buying some of this coffee because they just opened and they're out west, and I'm looking at the price, and it's $12 a pound, and I'm like, it seems like a lot of money. I appreciate small business and everything like that, but it seems like a lot of money, and I didn't buy it, and then I had some gifted to me, and now I've been drinking it, and I'm like, this is just utterly and fantastic coffee. And I've been drinking it black the last year and a half. So
that's what I've been doing.
Experiencing black coffee just the way it's supposed to be enjoyed.
I think I've been drinking black for about 2 years.
It's
amazing. And if you go with like a super dark roast, like that chicory coffee that's out of New Orleans, that Cafe Du Monde stuff, I've got some of that at home. That stuff is like almost espresso. Like it doesn't take much. Like you have the 1 pound of it or whatever, but like you don't have to use that much. It makes a lot,
and it's good. And I was just offering suggestions to Lauren the other day. She was talking about coffee. She's the one that
got me that coffee.
Oh, was she? Ironically, I was giving her suggestions about how she can start getting into drinking coffee black, because that was her thing. And I was like, you know what? Go buy some really good coffee that's recently roasted,
key.
Very recently roasted, and read the tasting notes is a big thing too. And then just try it at first to, you don't have to like it by any means, but actually read the tasting notes where you're seeing, fruit and berry and things like that, and chocolate, and you can taste it. It's absolutely incredible. So yeah, I get gifted all of this great coffee. Now that I'm drinking it, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to go back. And then I was not drinking beer, and I'm like, all right, I used to drink, or at least buy a $14 4-pack every couple of days or whatever, and a $12 pound of coffee's lasting me 4 or 5, 6 days, depending on what I'm drinking. I'm changing one vice for another. It's actually cheaper to drink coffee. I'm like, why am I having such a hard time wrapping my head around this price point when you're just so used to dropping $16 on a 4-pack of beer nowadays? And heck, in a good night, you go through it all.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like you think you're like, well, I'm going to drop this, so I should be free of anything else. But you're always, like I said, that's why I asked you if you were going to if you picked up the food a little bit more, because I did myself. I was like, once I found myself saving money, I found somewhere for the money to go. So people are like, oh, you're saving so much money. I'm like, no. It's just going to something else.
I did really well, and I was almost started tracking my expenses, but I had nothing to track because I was literally not doing anything. I'm staying at home. I'm drinking coffee. I'm eating extremely healthy. Not consuming anything but basically coffee and seltzer, which I've been buying seltzer on sale at 55 cents a can or whatever it ends up averaging out to, or per point. Actually, it's I can't even say that because it's $2.50 a 12-pack or whatever. I'm like, this is great. And I actually Googled recently, does seltzer count as water intake?
It does.
It does, fortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I hated it for the longest time, and I was like, you know what? I've been really enjoying it now. I picked up another 12-pack today. And
I have another piece of fun advice for you, or knowledge, facts, whatever you want to call it. Coffee actually counts as water intake as well. It is not a diuretic.
Interesting. I never thought it counted.
It does.
Oh,
yep. Especially because you're only drinking it black. You're not putting cream or sugar in there, right? Just black. You're good to go. That's water, my friend.
All right. Well, my next step is, I think, Chemex and an iced coffee maker is perhaps my next foray. Maybe Father's Day. I haven't decided. I've actually debated on just being able to do it down here, because I'm the only one in the house that drinks coffee.
Yeah.
So my coffee maker...
Stink everything up upstairs.
I've got a drip coffee maker upstairs. I'm like, why is it all up here? I'm the only one that drinks it. So I could just bring it down here and just make it all here, but I'd have my coffee grounds all over the place and this, that, the other thing.
Smell delicious down here all the time.
I love the smell. I love the smell of good coffee. But as it is, I already feel like I do dishes like incessantly with a household of 4. All you feel like you do is dishes. So I thought about it. I'm like, do I really want to get a Chemex where I have to do even more dishes every
it's like one of those
day?
things you have to take apart and clean?
It's a glass, really, is what it is, but it's still something to wash. Like,
sure.
I fresh juice when I can. Even that thing's a pain in the butt, but I'm trying to do that where I make bigger batches and I only have to make it like twice a week or whatever it is. But as it is, our dishwasher runs pretty much every day, every 2 days. You're just in a constant mode of filling the dishwasher, emptying the dishwasher, or doing the dishes in the sink. And that's when you have a family of 4. I mean, it's nonstop. I'd hire a dishwasher if I could, and I'd probably gain an extra couple hours a week right there. I could podcast just instead of doing dishes. It'd be great. If anyone wants to do that, you can apply to riffonpodcast@gmail.com. If I could subcontract my dishes, it'd be fantastic. So with that, what's the ideal length for a podcast?
They say an hour is like what you're supposed to do.
Right.
I've been listening to one lately that's like the guys do it live on Saturdays, and they literally do it. They record it as well. That's where I'm getting it, not live, but they do a 5-hour show.
That's crazy.
I know, and they're good at it. They talk it's filled with content.
That's a long time. That's dedication.
Yeah,
I used to do a 2-3 hour. 3 hours for my radio show, but you're filling it with music. I listen to my skimmer tape. It'd be 45 minutes of music, about 4 minutes of talking, 45 minutes of music, 4 minutes of talking.
Oh, these guys, the podcast they actually play music on the live version, but they edit it out for the podcast version. The podcast version is 4 hours and 50 minutes. That's without the music.
Wow.
That's just the talking parts.
That's hardcore.
Yeah.
I would do that. I would love it, actually. I miss the music aspect of it, and I love playing music and I love sharing music like immensely. I've still got my CD burner and things like that, and I love making music for people and sharing music with people. So I started a Facebook group to share when musicians were coming to town, to just kind of promote under the radar musicians, and I still love doing that. So I'd love to be able to tie that in some way, shape, or form to actually do a podcast related to it. Maybe it's cursory music review / teasing type of thing. I don't know. I'm just going to be a full-time podcaster. If someone could just pay my bills, it'd be fantastic.
Do you do a podcast? Yes, I do. I do 8 podcasts.
Yes, I do. Well, it's like I tweet. I've got like 10 Twitter accounts. I don't tweet actively from all of them, but I'm an active tweeter. If I could be paid for that and podcasting, I'd be psyched. I'd be so psyched. It'd be great. Professionally drink beer and share music, and I'd do it in a heartbeat. So,
me too.
So I don't know. We're about hour 35 type of thing, but this is what happens when you just kind of enjoy just, catching up and shooting the breeze and talking about conversation, topics, I should say, that are, fun.
And you can mark this in the history books or your calendar as the first podcast that I've been on that's gone over a half an hour and I haven't had to use the bathroom. So
you went just before we started.
I did. I made sure I cleaned out, although I didn't really have to go that much. But I would have gone twice in a podcast now. There would have been 2 breaks because I would have had to go.
I'll bring down a pickle jar for you the next time around.
I'm going to get wireless mics at my house. You'll hear me going to the bathroom on the podcast.
You just turn it off. Just don't pull a Frank Drebin and just go to the bathroom with your microphone on. That's the only thing my basement is missing. We have 3 bathrooms in the house. 2 full bathrooms and 1 whatever half bath, and they're all on the main floor. And our downstairs here does not have a bathroom, unfortunately.
Yeah, mine doesn't either. I'm glad it doesn't. If I
had my bathroom downstairs and my coffee maker downstairs, I'd come down here at 8:30 in the morning for work, and I'd go back upstairs at 5.
Honey, why is there an oven being delivered downstairs? Yeah, I plan on never coming back upstairs again. Sorry.
It's the conveniences of life, but I go upstairs. It's funny because now you found out we're in a basement, which is freezing cold all winter long and nicely chilly in the summer when you want it to be. So it's great. So you go upstairs and it's 80 degrees in the house and it's a little stifling, and you come downstairs and it's 67.8 degrees right now, which is actually 5 degrees warmer than it was this morning, which I come downstairs, I'm in full hoodie and pajama pants. I'm like, it's 62, it's chilly, it's 54 outside. So this works out well when the weather is warmer outside, which it has been, because thank God it's springtime in Vermont. So
I know.
So we'll have to figure out how to do one of those roving podcasts with the windows down, and just.
I think we'd be able to do it anyway. I don't think there'd be much. I mean, I got the the poofs that go on the mics, and we'd be fine. Right. I mean, most of our actual voices would get lost, but you'll still hear us. We'll just sound flat.
That's not so bad. Or we could do random pit stops. Let's go podcast from that field.
Yeah.
We'll go have a beer out in the field, and just, as we drive through northern
we'll bring
Vermont.
some folding chairs, like beach chairs.
No, it's not so bad. That's not a bad idea. We'll have to look into that. So, all right. Well, I suppose we should wrap up before we just, lose the listener.
Dude, we're at 90 minutes. I have to use the bathroom.
It was inevitable. Pauly V, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for egging me on. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Mel and Andy, I still love you guys very much. And we all got to get together soon. Maybe the 4 of us could even get on. We've talked about actually doing that at your studio.
I'm right around the corner. I've got my own stuff. Or you can bring stuff over to my place and plug in.
It's just the other side of Colchester. We've got to do that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And hey, maybe we'll find a niche audience with the 4 of us. And heck, we'll all bring our listener to the table, and we'll have 4 listeners just like that.
Exactly.
That's not so bad. So,
Andy, when you come, bring your guitar.
Oh, that's a good idea. He can create a theme song for us, too.
There you go.
That's a good idea. Awesome, man. Well, until next time, thank you very much, Pauly V. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, riff on.